What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Gooner channel, a channel 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. And today, Monday the 24th of April, I'm going to be covering the news straight out of Arsenal. And this morning we all woke up to the disappointing, if not unexpected, news that William Saliba will not be fit to play in the game on Wednesday, our biggest game of the season, away to Man City. I don't think any of us are truly surprised about this. If he wasn't fit enough to play on Friday, then, even if he had been somehow miraculously fit, he's going to be so lacking match fitness that it probably wouldn't be worth chucking him to that size of game either. It turns out that after Arteta had briefed us all on Thursday that he wasn't developing as quickly as he'd hoped, reports have now suggested that we have an update, and that is that he has serious structural damage to his back, and that it would be risking a very long-term layoff if we brought him back too soon. So I don't think any of us want to see that, particularly as Arsenal fans. We know a little bit too much about losing great long-term prospects to injuries, and I think if it does mean, as it seems to mean now, that he isn't going to be playing much of a part for the rest of the season, then so be it. Now, I don't know what side of the fence you're on, whether you think that losing Saliba is the reason that we've lost 6 points in the last 3 games, or whether you think actually we were starting to ship goals even with Saliba in the team. I know that there are people looking desperately to blame somebody that will say Rob Holding is at fault, and whilst I don't necessarily think that you can say he's been at fault for the goals that we've shipped, is it a pure coincidence that we've let in 7 in the last 3 games? I think actually my position on this is that it's the change that undoes things. We had a really settled back four: Ben White, Zinchenko, Gabriel and Saliba, and any change to that is what's caused the problem. I've seen some huge tactical contortions being done to try and work out how to not play Holding on Wednesday. One of the ones that I saw that particularly struck me was Thomas Partey, who has played at right back. He's even played right back for us briefly, going into right back. Zinchenko occupying a midfield space, and Ben White then reforming that centre-back partnership with Gabriel, perhaps bringing Tierney in as left-back, or, putting Jorginho in and moving to... There's lots of different ways of doing this. One thing that I will say is that if it is the change that kills you, and I think Arteta will be as settled as possible. It's not impossible, I think, that he could panic a little bit and make some unnecessary changes in that game on Wednesday. But personally, I'd like to see him keep it as settled as possible. Rob Holding would not be my first choice centre-back in this option, but I don't think he's anybody's first choice. He's our third choice centre-back. It's just that we have injuries, and this is pointing to the fact that our squad is not quite there when it comes to challenging for a Premier League title. Although I'm certainly not ruling it out, and I can't wait for that game on Wednesday. And something I keep repeating to everybody who'll listen is, how fantastic is it that we go up to the Etihad? It won't all be done then, even if we get an absolute spanking, or even if we beat City, the title's not over. Which means that it's only us and City as fans that really can enjoy the run into this season with this at stake. And I'm really grateful for that. And I don't want to start thinking yet about what if we don't win, because that would be sad and irritating. I will say at this point that if you need an example of how changing a system too much before going away to one of your closest rivals, if you want a serious example of how that can go very badly wrong, thank you, Spurs. One of the Spursiest performers you could possibly imagine. Certainly lifted my spirits on the Sunday after our game against Southampton, and for all of the people who gave us abuse for not playing well enough to beat Southampton at home. What a gift that game was. And that really came down to them suddenly trying out a flat back four. I think we will try and stay as settled as possible and get the mood right. Hopefully Arteta is learning as he goes as well, that you do need to stay calm in these situations. Calm heads win tournaments. Calm heads win trophies. In another bit of news, I don't like to cover transfers that much because it's easy to just throw names out there. Milinkovic-Savic is being talked about now. I hope that there is some truth in that rumor. We'll probably do a video about that. But the big one that sort of won't die down over the weekend is Mason Mount. Apparently, Arsenal have had talks with Chelsea to talk about potentially signing Mason Mount. Obviously, Chelsea are going through their transitional season, going from a European elite club to mid-table laughingstock, and it's cost them 600 million to do that at this point. They are currently in 121 million deficit from last season, which is higher than the 105 permitted by financial fair play, and we know how seriously everyone takes financial fair play. But they are, for them, with the kind of squad that they've amassed, certainly being able to offload a player for what I understand to be around 80 million would make sense in those terms. Certainly the contract negotiations have stalled. As I understand it, I'm not a Chelsea insider, I'm not an insider anywhere, but from the reading I've done, apparently Mason Mount, who's only on £80,000 a week, which in today's terms is nothing. I mean, I don't know how he lives off it, but it does make him one of the less well-paid players in that now newly extended dressing room at Chelsea. Had apparently been holding out for £300,000 a week. They didn't make an offer in those kind of terms. Chelsea had offered him a long-term 7-year contract. He wanted a shorter-term contract with a higher weekly wage, and had hoped to negotiate a stronger position after the World Cup. But since the World Cup didn't really work out for him, when he came back, he was looking to take a lesser offer, but that stalled as well. So there is a chance here. And look, do I think that Mason Mount would be a good signing for Arsenal? Yeah, I can definitely see it, actually. I think he'd fit into that Granit Xhaka position really well. He is a Champions League winner, winning mentality. Last season at Chelsea, he scored 11 and had 10 assists. So he was the single best goal contributor in that Chelsea team. He's fallen right down the pecking order this season, and it hasn't really worked for him under Graham Potter. It hasn't worked again for him under Frank Lampard's new, can I call it a regime? Shit show, whatever you want to call it. So Mason Mount, I think, he's made his mind up to leave. Of course, he's being linked with Liverpool, who have to completely rebuild their midfield. Of course, he's being linked with Newcastle, who have oil money to spend. And, of course, every midfield player at the moment is going to be linked to them. But the link to us seems like a strong one. And as I said, I don't like to talk about transfers, but I do think Declan Rice is almost nailed on, even though I've seen him speculated as a possible transfer to Liverpool and to Newcastle. I think that a midfield where I can see a midfield where Declan Rice starts to take over from Thomas Partey and Mason Mount starts to take over from Granit Xhaka. My only concern with this, well, there's a few actually, is we know that Charlie Patino is going to be coming back from Blackpool. Does he go off on loan again, or is he going to get some game time in that position? Of course, we have Jorginho, and we'll have El Neni back as well, who signed an extension. We're starting to get a bit full up in that position. Not that I have a problem with that, but I don't want it to obstruct the pathway for a player coming through. And there has been so much talk over the last few months that Emile Smith-Rowe is being groomed for that position. Would it get in the way of him developing? I would still like to see us sign Declan Rice and Mason Mount. I think that's a great statement of intent. But there is a part of me that says if you've got that kind of money, and that would be about 150 million to 160 million, why not just bite the bullet and buy Jude Bellingham? I haven't given up hope on that either. But this does take us neatly to the question around players who might be going out. And of course, Emile Smith-Rowe. Rumours, and that's all they are, have surfaced now that we are looking again. Aston Villa are coming back with another 30 to 35 million pound bid for Emile Smith-Rowe. Obviously, that was a laughable suggestion when they offered it at the start of the season, pre-season, because Emile Smith-Rowe had been such an important player for us. He's had a really torrid season. He had injuries over the last few years that he finally got cleared up now, but he's been fit as long as Reece Nelson hasn't, and just hasn't got any game time. And these rumours are not coincidentally coming around the time where Fabio Vieira gets picked ahead of him for Friday night's game at Southampton. I'm not trying to get on Fabio's back. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think that he is completely out of his depth at the moment and needs a bit longer to acclimatise to Premier League football. Certainly at this end of the season where it really starts to mean something. He was a forlorn figure in that game, and I could not understand why Emile Smith-Rowe wasn't given some time. We know that Emile brings you goal threat. We know that he carries the ball well and he's exciting. And for me, he's one of my favourite players at the club, and I would be absolutely gutted to see him go. For me, it reminds me so much of when Merson left under Wenger, who had this kind of policy at a certain age that they would just had to be shipped out. Emile is young. He's a product of the academy. He must surely deserve a bit more time. But a lot of this is coming out of the fact that Arteta has said and spoken in glowing terms about Emil Smith-Rowe, but says he needs to show me that he's up for it. I think, since we're speculating, because the Football 365 story linking Emil Smith-Rowe with the move to Aston Villa actually quotes Charles Watts from his YouTube channel, saying, where they quote him as saying something has gone wrong. But that's just Charles Watts speculating. He doesn't know any more than the rest of us why he's not getting any game time. And it surprised him, and full credit to him for bringing this story up. I agree that it is baffling that we can't see Emil Smith-Rowe on the pitch at all at the moment. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the situation we had with Tierney. Arteta does like to stick in this rut, and perhaps a bit long, but for Football 365, we're kind of representing it as if he'd had some insider information. He hasn't. I just think that Arteta is building a squad with the right kind of desire, and he doesn't see it in Emil. And even though Emil's always shown it on the pitch, maybe he's not showing it by knocking on the door and demanding a place, or all these things that some managers need you to do. I hope the speculation here is wrong, and I would hate to see him go to Aston Villa, even though they're playing really well at the moment, and I'm actually really pleased to see Unai Emery get some of the respect he deserves. And finally, a player who definitely won't be coming back to Arsenal, and we didn't get to see on Friday because he's a lone player at Southampton, Ainsley Maitland-Niles. And I think if there is a textbook example of how an attitude can get in your way a little bit, he basically manoeuvred his way out of Arsenal because he didn't want to play right back. Has ended up playing right back at a relegation-threatened club, a club that will probably go down. And I do think he'll have a good career, but I don't think that he could have had the career that he would have done if he just knuckled down and done what was asked of him at Arsenal. I wish him all the best. I've always had a lot of time for Ainsley Maitland-Niles. I'm sorry it didn't work out for him at Arsenal. But the news coming out saying that he's decided not to come back seems a little bit silly, because I think even if he decided he wanted to come back and crawled on hands and knees to Arteta, I don't think he'd have got anywhere near this squad at the moment. I just think we've all moved on a little bit. It's a progress, it's evolution, and I love the process we're in, and I love the way it's going. And I don't think there's space for some of the players that we all have become quite attached to, and there'll be more on that in other videos. But that's quite enough for me. I thank you so much for watching to the end. Of course, if you have watched to the end and you have this amount of time to spend listening to me, then you definitely have the amount of time to click subscribe. But don't subscribe. Do not subscribe unless you actually do want to come back and watch further videos very much like this one. And I thank you for all of your support. Be lucky and lots of love.